All right, class, welcome back. This is chapter 7, 8, and nine's lecture. Uh, Without a doubt, chapter 7 is our most important chapter, and this is one that I wish I could actually spend all 8 weeks on. This talks more about the actual way you would sell and how you're going to sit down on the phone, basically, how you're going to go out and find people that you're going to sell to. So, chapter 7, without doubt, the most important chapter in my mind. And again, I come from a background of 20 plus years in sales. This is the chapter you guys really want to pay closest attention to. So, what we're going to find here is we're going to talk a little bit about the way and when and how we sell. Okay. So there are various ways that you'll sell hotel rooms, conference center space, convention center space, right? Person to person, on the phone, in a sales blitz situation, trade shows. Um, those are the areas that you most typically will be in a situation where you're going to be selling your property or the amenities that your property has. So do things change in any one of those particular situations? For the most part, no. If I'm selling on the phone, it's really no different than if I'm selling sitting down with somebody face to face. And I say that because the way I would teach you guys to sell is not the hard sell, bang somebody over the head, I have to win at all cost sales. Okay. That philosophy has long since been debunked and is not used hardly at all in any industry. The idea now is more of a what I'll say a win-win compromise type situation, right? I come at this from a situation that I have a solution for some people's problem. The problem being they need overnight rooms, they need meeting space, they need someplace to hold a ballroom, a convention, they need someplace to hold a dinner, what have you. So I have a solution. So I have to put forth on why my solution is the best solution to the problem they have, which is obviously finding space or finding overnight rooms. Okay, so that comes up with a win-win situation. And the idea is then that we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss, and you as a sales manager has to really hone your skills and that you are there to listen, right? It'd be very easy for me to what we call feature dump, or what we used to call show up and throw up, where you basically sit down with the client, you tell them everything you know about the hotel. Well, again, that doesn't do them any good if they're only there to hopefully find overnight rooms. Then the idea of you talking about meeting space and ballroom space and what you could do from a hospitality standpoint doesn't make any sense. It's not what they want to know. You have to be a good listener to be a good sales manager. You have to be able to sit down and find out. And the way we were trained is what we saw. You'll find their pain, right? What is it? What's the problem that they need a solution to? And then through your knowledge of the hotel, show them the benefits that your hotel offers that can solve that problem, right? You can be the solution. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you know, there's a number of different ways the sales process starts. Typically, it starts obviously with the first introduction. Now, that can be a cold call, that can be meeting somebody at a conference, meeting somebody at a meet and greet. When you're in the hotel world, a number of you will be involved in a variety of associations, whether that's Meeting Professionals International, whether that's Indie Chamber, um, Urban League, Black Expo. I mean, there are 1,001 different ways you can be involved in the city, and that's how you begin to meet your contacts, and that's how those first appointments, those first interactions will work, if you will. And from there, then you begin to ask questions, right? You find out again, are you a planner? Do you hold meetings? Do you have need for overnight rooms? Those discussions and that ability to ask questions and listen to the answers. One big problem that a lot of sales managers have is they don't listen to the answer of the question they asked. They're immediately lining up the next question. And what happens is your client may be giving you an end to what their needs are, right? They could be desperate. They just blurt everything out. Hey, look, I got 25 overnight rooms. They've got to be no more than 159 a pop, and I've got to have all kings. They've got to be on your executive level. They're giving you all the information, but your training says I asked this question, then I asked that question. Can't be the case. You've got to be able to listen to what your client is saying. So along those lines, you have to prep yourself. Okay. And a lot of times, and I should say, there are some times where you're not going to be able to prep, right? You're meeting somebody out of chance. At that point, you're going to have your routine kind of down in your head. Other times, you're going to be able to pre-plan, right? Whether you're making a cold call, you set up a meeting with somebody. So again, you're going to have done your research, right? Who this individual is, what their decision um, strengths are, where their decisions lie, like what can they decide upon, what they cannot decide upon. Maybe you know the history of meetings within your hotel, or you know them within your competition. competition. So you're going in to talk about, hey, I understand that you guys always hold this November meeting over at the Hyatt. It seems like it'd be a better fit for us. What's the opportunity for us getting a chance to bid on this, right? So you'll have done your research prior to sitting down with the client. You also need to know your property, right? So again, as they begin to open up about their needs, you have to be able to show them where your benefits fit their needs. Okay, and again, you can't just you can't just throw out things, right? Um, if someone comes to me and says, "I'm looking for a certain level of overnight rooms, or I'm looking for so much space," and they say, "Hey, I want rooms without pillars." Okay, well, I had 12 meeting rooms that had pillars in them. I can't talk about those, right? If I'm listening, those are off the table. That's not what they're looking for. I'm not offering a solution to their problem. So I could only mention the ones, Illinois Street Ballroom in our case, Grand Hall, some other ones that didn't have pillars. All right. So again, when you're sitting down, it's not about you feature dumping on somebody. It's not about you showing how smart you are, how much you know about your property. It's how well do you listen and come up with a solution using the benefits of your hotel to solve their problem. Okay, and that's a vital, vital, vital part of being a sales manager. So with that, obviously, when you sit down with somebody, you're going to want to have all the tools, at your fingertips. We're going to talk about it here in just a little bit about on the advertising side, but they mentioned collateral. You have to have collateral of your hotel. A lot of clients are going to want to be able to take things home, whether it's the numbers, what your hotel room holds, what your ballroom space holds, what the physical layout is. There are those who just need to compare from one hotel to the other, so they'll just put them together, making a comparison. The other thing you need to be aware of too is as you're having a discussion with somebody, and please understand, I am giving you a very, very fast overview of how one can sit down and sell. Again, this could be an 8-week course unto itself, but you're going to want to listen to what the individual is saying, not only listening to what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Okay, so most people are either auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. So if you're auditory, that means you take things in verbally, right? If you're kinesthetic, it's more about the feel of something. And if you're visual, you're trying to see it. So you'll pick up on key words that someone says when they talk about, I just don't know how this room feels from the standpoint of when all my clients are going to be here. You're going to have to describe it in that way. If someone is trying to get a visual, I need someone to paint me the picture. Okay, now you've got to be very descriptive in how you set the room up, right? You're going to paint the picture for that individual because that's how they're seeing it in their head. So those are just little things you're going to want to listen to as you talk to a client to make sure on the communication side you're communicating in a way that they can take in information. One of the biggest mistakes many sales managers make is that we begin to use verbiage or we begin to communicate in a style that is not um, the best way that our receiver receives information. And that's something that takes a little while to pick up on, but that's very, very important to really listen to what they're saying and make sure then that you're communicating your benefits, you're communicating what your hotel can offer in a way that they take in information. So um, along those lines, the sales process is one that it can happen very fast, where someone's probably in a desperate need and so they're just happy that you answer the phone maybe and they just go ahead and buy right away. That's not typical. Typically, you have to build trust. When you go to build trust, you're looking at when the client asks for something, you provide it, right? Timely manner, it's correct. That's how you build up that trust bank. There are other ways to do it as well, and this was one that I went to great lengths to do in my career. Was a lot of times I would get called upon by clients for non-hotel related information. It might be, JJ, I know you've been in the industry for a while. Who would you go to when it came to a planner? We need a third party planner. We need a destination management company. Who would you call upon? We need somebody to get our clients to and from the airport. Do you know a transportation company? And again, I would give them the name of contacts that we had that I trusted. And what that did was that continued to build up that trust. They would call me on things that were specific to the hospitality industry in a lot of cases, but may not be didn't generate any revenue for me or for our hotel, but it was my opportunity to build trust. And so when the opportunity came to bid on different pieces of business, they already had that trust in place. They knew that I would not do anything that would be against their better interest. Now, again, I'm trying to balance a win for the hotel, a win for my client, but I was not going to take them and take advantage of anything that they had offered. So that's where that trust factor comes into, and you kind of have a bank of trust. in the sense that, when you do things right, you build up a credit, right? And then, when things go wrong, you debit from that account, if you will. So keep that in mind as well, that there are so many opportunities that you can build that trust with a client that goes well beyond, you know, the business side of things, right? If you said you're going to get something to them at this particular time, it's there by that particular time. If you said that your general manager is going to call and talk to them about them, the GM calls and talks to them, just those little things, that begins to build that trust, and that leads you to bigger successes down the road. So with that in mind, like I said, the the biggest thing probably, as you begin to look at preparing for a sales call, preparing for it in person, preparing for really anything, a blitz, what have you, is that you want to have your questions ready to go, right? You want to make sure you understand them as well as you can so you can offer solutions. And then the other element of it, especially in a sit down sales position, a sit down sales call, never be afraid to ask for the business when you're done. You're going to ask tons and tons of questions. I used to always ask, is there anything here that would make you hesitant to come to my hotel? If there was if you had a magic wand, what would you wave differently to make this proposal even better? And at the very end, then, is there anything that's stopping you right now from giving me the business? You know, and if there isn't, then you've put forth your best solution and it matches most of their needs. Now, somebody could have a better one, right? They may look at my proposal and go, everything you put in here is fine. It matches our needs. It's within our price range. Da, 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 da. The hotel over here offers three more benefits that I didn't offer, and they go that way. Okay, that's fine. That's going to happen. But I want to make sure that there's nothing within what I've offered that's going to go. They're going to walk away and go, not in a million years. I can't deal with that. You've got to ask those questions. You have to be okay with hearing hard news, constructive criticism, and the word no. No is just another word. As sales managers, we hear it all the time. A lot of times, what no means is not right now, or no, there's something wrong with your proposal. We need to fix it. So again, don't ever be afraid of that word. Again, hear it all the time. And like you said, a lot of times, no is just not right now. This wasn't a good fit this time, but next time we come out, we don't need elements A, B, and C, which is where you were weakest at. Now we will bring the business to you. So those are some things that from a sales side that you should be aware of. The book does a good job of covering that. Please read it in depth. He really does lay this out quite well. Talks about a few other elements of where you would do sales. Your blitzing, which is a little bit of a different experience, where you're more just kind of building rapport as opposed to making a hard sell right away. Again, on the phone is where you will do a lot of sales. In person, trade shows. Again, you'll have those elements. But when you're selling in that world, nothing really changes. Whether it's on the phone or in person, what you're doing is really the same. It's just the vehicle you're using. So that was chapter 7. Let me bump over here to chapter 8. So we get into 8, and the book talks about advertising. And I'll be honest with you, in my experience, the advertising for our hotel was not handled. There were very few elements of the advertising that we handled internally or within our hotel. We had a third party that handled that. Our brand handled it from a national scope. We obviously didn't. We didn't obviously didn't advertise for Crown Plaza as a whole. There's a national branding office that works on that, but there were smaller elements that we would work on. So when you have the opportunity, whether it's to do a sponsorship, there's radio, there are some print ads you might do. A lot of this is going to go through the director of sales if you don't have your own marketing team. So the book's going to walk through some very specifics of, you know, strategies within advertising. Please take a look at it. Obviously, you do need to understand this and do need to know it. I'd be shocked if you go into the sales world if you were asked to do this right away. It's usually a higher up type of responsibility, if you will, but it's good to understand why advertisement is done the way it is. The other two elements that are in this chapter that I do think you want to pay close attention to, collateral. We talked about that actually in the chapter 7, just before this, where again, how important that is. It needs to be accurate. You want the most up-to-date pictures you can have. You want pictures that show off the elegance of a room or the functionality of a room. You don't want something that makes it look smaller if it's one of your biggest ballrooms. Setting it up in a way that shows it's best set up, right? If the room is best set up in rounds of 10, then that's the picture you want to use. If it's more of a meeting room or classroom style 2 for 6 is what you want, then that's what you want to put together. We spent weeks arguing over our collateral information when we had it redone. a couple times when I was at the hotel. And it is very important because it is the piece you will leave behind the client will refer to on a regular basis. So it's got to be sharp, it's got to be good, and it's got to be accurate. The last element I talked on, and this definitely is coming more and more to light, probably since the book was first printed, but that's the social media element of it. And obviously, there are multiple platforms that you can choose to promote your hotel, to promote yourself as a sales manager. This is definitely something that I would say you would not want to go out on your own and do. This is a sit down with your director. This is a sit down with the general manager, your management group, again, at General Hotel Corporations. My apologies if you see my dog jump into the picture right now. She's a little needy. So, with that in mind, you really have to figure out who's the client that I'm trying to attract, right? If I'm trying to attract that baby boomer who's still within the market, who's still making decisions, I'm probably not going to be putting things on TikTok, right? I might go to LinkedIn, I might go to Facebook. On the same side, if I'm trying to show off from the hospitality side, our wedding venue, the ability to hold banquets, the ability to hold high end dinners, then I might use Instagram. I might use a Snapchat because those are going to show us in the best light. And it's probably where individuals are going to go to find information on the hotel. So those are definitely things that you're going to need to understand going in. Like I said, a lot of times hotels will have somebody who runs their social media. That's not always the case. That was something I did get to do for the Crown for a little while because we just didn't have anybody who handled that at the time. We had lost our marketing director. But more often than not, you're going to have a marketing director within your management group that probably handles that. But it's definitely something that you want to know and be a part of. Whenever you can, tag pictures that you send out, great things that happen with the client. You can tag your own social media, their social media. That just begins to grow. And again, depending on what generation you're a part of, you understand now the research that goes on through social media is huge. And so again, you have to have that social media presence and you want it to be positive and controlled the best way you can. So that is chapter 8. And then the last element is chapter 9. And it's kind of funny because they've kind of chapter 9 and chapter 7 could have kind of been sorry, pushed together, if you will, right? Merged. That's what I'm looking for. Because it talks about negotiations and contracts, which is kind of on the sales side as well. So when we get to the point where we're sitting down, either we've gotten the business per se, or we know that we're one of the last people they're talking to about the business. That's when the negotiations come in, right? And that's where you're trying to find that win-win situation where I'm I want both parties to walk away with the understanding that they got the best deal that was possible without screwing over the other person. Okay. So again, I'm not looking to break the bank on a company's budget. I need to make sure that I'm profitable. There's always a happy middle ground. And a lot of times that comes from asking those right questions, right? Not being afraid to ask the client about their budget, not being able to share with them, look, this time of year, here's where we're typically at, right? I know you're going to have a revenue manager. That's where a lot of these are going to go through. And we kind of talk about that from a proposal standpoint. When you put a proposal together, it's not like you just pick a number out of your head. Revenue manager is going to look at the overall history of your hotel. And they're going to be able to say, okay, for the last 10 years, during this time period, this is the average rate that we know we can get. JJ, you can't offer less than that. Or if you do, we have to get more food and beverage, or we have to get room rental. So that the entire revenue package is good enough that it would make up for whatever we lost on overnight rooms. Okay, so those are the kind of things you're going to go through with your revenue manager to kind of walk you through that process. So when you put together a proposal, you'll have done all of that work prior to sitting down with the client. You'll know what range you're allowed to be in, right? You'll know what benefits you can give. You'll know where you can take away cost. You take away the revenue. Don't sorry, you don't have to pay for room rental, but you have to have a minimum food and beverage now, 15,000 as opposed to 12. All of this will come into that negotiation standpoint. And again, it goes back to questions, right? What's important to the client? You might be giving them a discount on VIP rooms and they have no idea VIP's coming. They don't care about that. They're not going that doesn't look like a win to them. They didn't get anything. So you have to understand again where you want to offer that benefit so that it's meaningful to the client. All right. Um, you know, so that's kind of in your negotiation part. And again, the book does go into some detail um, about how to make it a win-win, how to understand your strengths, how to understand what the competition strengths are. Again, knowing what the client can and can't do. this may be the hardest part is getting a client to admit what their budget is. And it's one of the most difficult reasons I think is because clients figure that if they tell us their budget for overnight rooms is no more than 179, then we immediately go to the 179, right? It's not always the case. I want to know, usually I'll ask them for a range. Where do you fall? We can pay between 159 and 189 J, but I can't pay any more. Okay, now I have my range to work in. And so I can go back to my revenue manager and say, what is our range? And if it fits, great, we move forward, not a big deal. But I've had clients who have come in and said, look, we can't pay any more than $99 a room. And it's a time period that, we've averaged 149, 159 in a room. I've had to walk away. Um, we needed rooms at that time, but we knew historically we would eventually get them. And so taking something that low rated didn't make any sense for the hotel. It wasn't a win for us. And as much as I hated doing it, I'd have to walk away. So that does happen. And again, that's why that sit down with the revenue manager, sit down with your director of sales is going to be vitally important before you go down and sit down with the client. So you know where your parameters are and how much you can give and how much you have to get. With that in mind, again, it's going to go in once you've sat down and you and the client agree, it goes to the contract phase. A lot of different things go into a contract. Most of you are going to have contracts that are standard for your particular property, for your particular brand. I will say this, it is incredibly key that not only you understand your contracts, you have to make sure the client understands them. And I say this, and I know times have changed a little bit. When I was last in the industry, it was right about the time that many of the meeting planners who had been full-time meeting planners were kind of leaving the industry. You still had third parties, but within a company, if I was dealing with an individual at a company, most of the time they didn't have any kind of hotel or hospitality experience when it came to booking, when it came to contracts. And so what would happen is after getting burned once or twice with a client who didn't live up to their contractual obligations when it came to room nights or came to food and beverage minimums, they were shell shocked to find out that there was cancellation clauses, there were minimum clauses, and so then all of a sudden it becomes very adversarial, and it gets ugly at the end, and it's hard to get that client back again. So what I learned very quickly was if I was dealing with somebody very inexperienced, I would sit down and actually walk them through all the elements of the contract to make sure they understand, hey, look, there's a minimum here. And here's what happens if you don't hit the minimum. You're going to have to pay for 90% of what that minimum was. So, you have a certain number of overnight rooms you have to hit. If you fall short of that, you're still paying for the rooms. And really lay that out. And what I found, and then along those same lines too, things as simple as um, AV needs for a room. Someone might say, "Well, Jay, I want a sound system." Okay, well, what you don't understand with the sound system is you had a speaker and you had a presentation going on. A mixer has to come in as well. That's an extra cost. I have to have an IT person there to run that. That's another cost. So now, yes, the sound system costs $125 a day, but you have to have these two elements to make this work with what you're doing. And again, if you don't lay that out for them, you can't assume they understand that. So there were a lot of times where we had to lay out exactly what was going on. And to be honest, that made us better salespeople and it built more trust because what it did was it showed the client, look, we don't want you to be surprised by anything that happens. The last thing we want is to just have a negative or adversarial relationship here. And so by showing where those pitfalls were, showing where things could go wrong, then we we then were setting ourselves up for success again if something didn't go as planned. So with that in mind, make sure that as you are talking to your clients, you'll figure out very quickly how knowledgeable they are. So with that in mind, you'll have to realize, do I need to walk them through this so they completely understand what they're committing to so that we're not surprised, say, 4 months down the road. So that's kind of the elements of contracts, negotiation. Again, talked about your revenue manager. That's a big, big position within the hotel because they are going to be the ones that really set where your range can be as far as offering a rate. Now, sometimes something specific may come up and you say, okay, we really want this client because they can bring us future business. And maybe on this piece of business, we can go below what the revenue manager wants. Or it may be because it's in bulk. They're bringing us 7 different meetings, 100 overnight rooms per meeting. Meeting 3, that rate's going to be a little low, but 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all above what our normal rate is sometimes. So we'll take it, knowing we'll take a little bit of a loss here, maybe, but we'll have huge gains over here. So that's where that revenue manager comes into play to make sure that, again, the hotel gets the win that they need, as well as your clients getting their win. So that is it for chapters 7, 8, and 9. Again, 25 minutes. Sorry, guys, 3 chapters. I'm trying to be as short-winded as possible. So, as always, as you're going through your assignments, we've got discussion boards, we've got tests coming up, and we've got a few of your assignments or your case studies are coming up. So, if you have questions, don't hesitate. Text me, email me, call me. Does not matter. All right. Best of luck, guys. See you soon.